There's no way that you could watch Michael Jordan and LeBron James and think that Michael Jordan is not the GOAT.
LeBron James has spent so many years being protected by the basketball world that now, when the conversation starts shifting, it almost feels unusual. For years, whenever LeBron had a bad game, the focus somehow always found its way back to someone or something else. It was the coach's fault, the roster's fault, the front office's fault, the schedule, the matchup, or the idea that he simply needed more help around him. And to be fair, there were definitely moments when those arguments made sense. But now, something feels different. The excuses are growing louder, patience is running thinner, and even parts of the media that once seemed quick to protect LeBron are starting to sound more skeptical. That is what makes this entire situation so interesting. The latest criticism is not about LeBron missing shots or struggling through a rough scoring night. This conversation goes much deeper than that. It is about defense. It is about effort. It is about whether a 41-year-old LeBron James, a player still praised every time he delivers a highlight moment, should also face the same level of criticism when he appears to slow down or struggle on the defensive end of the floor. And according to growing discussions around the league, that is exactly what people are starting to question more loudly than ever before.
In your best interest to play all 82, is that something you thought about at all since you made the goal?
I mean, that's a goal, but we'll see. But it's something I ain't discussing right now.
The Lakers reportedly held a meeting involving J.J. Redick, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic after a rough stretch of defensive performances. Redick, who has never been afraid to hold players accountable, reportedly wanted more effort from his two biggest stars on the defensive end. And that alone tells you exactly where the conversation stands right now. This is no longer about whether LeBron can still score points. It is not about whether he can still throw down a powerful dunk, make a highlight play, or chase down a block every now and then. Everybody already knows he is still capable of doing those things. The real question is much deeper than that. Is LeBron consistently giving the Lakers the level of effort they actually need from him, especially on defense? That is where the criticism starts hitting harder, because the argument being made is extremely direct. For a lot of people, LeBron's biggest defense today is simple: age. He is 41 years old. So what exactly do people expect from him? That is the response many fans use whenever criticism about his defense comes up. He is older now. He is not the same athlete he was in his prime. He cannot realistically be expected to chase every possession the same way he did at 28, and on the surface, that argument sounds completely fair. But according to critics, the real issue starts when the conversation shifts to everything else LeBron still does on the court. Whenever he throws down a dunk, sprints in transition, makes a chase down block, or shows flashes of athletic dominance, people immediately celebrate how unbelievable he still looks for his age. Fans call him the greatest 40-year-old player ever. They point to his longevity as proof that he permanently belongs in the GOAT debate. Then the question becomes simple. If LeBron is still great enough to receive praise for those athletic moments, why does criticism suddenly become unfair when the conversation shifts toward defensive effort? That is the core of the argument, and it is a strong one because it points directly at what some people believe has been a double standard surrounding LeBron for years. When the game looks spectacular, LeBron gets the praise. When he delivers historic moments, he gets celebrated. When he does something incredible that leaves fans speechless, people rush to add more legacy points to his career. But the moment the discussion turns toward effort, especially defensive effort, the tone often changes. Suddenly, the explanation becomes age. Suddenly, fatigue becomes the reason. Suddenly, expectations are lowered, and many people begin acting as if asking for defensive consistency is somehow too much because of the mileage on his body after decades in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we came that far, so, trying to see if I can make plays. Obviously my presence on the floor, is key for our ball club, but I thought the guys did a great job, especially in overtime. I thought Marcus was great in overtime, hit the three, and away from their bench. I think Rui threw it over the top. He hit the three, got to the free throw line, made free throws.
That is exactly the argument the source is pushing back against. And honestly, it is hard to completely ignore the point being made. Nobody is asking LeBron James to suddenly become Gary Payton or lock down the opposing team's best player for 40 minutes every night. Nobody expects him to cover the entire floor by himself or move like a young superstar still in his prime. But there's a major difference between being physically limited and looking disengaged. There's a difference between conserving energy and appearing checked out of a play. And there's definitely a difference between getting older and simply not showing enough effort. That distinction matters, and it is a big reason why the criticism surrounding LeBron has started getting louder. The argument keeps coming back to one central idea. LeBron's defensive struggles are not only about physical limitations. That is what makes the debate more complicated, because if his body simply could not handle it anymore, the conversation would probably sound very different. People would talk about aging, reduced minutes, changing roles, and the reality of playing basketball at 41 years old. But critics argue there is still plenty of evidence showing LeBron can produce elite moments whenever he decides to turn it on. He can still sprint back and make a huge defensive play. He can still explode for powerful dunks. He can still move with flashes of athleticism that make people forget his age entirely. And that is where the criticism becomes sharper. The argument being made is not that LeBron physically cannot do it anymore. It is that he chooses when to do it, choosing when to sprint and when to coast, choosing when to chase a defensive play and when to drift through possessions, choosing when to rotate defensively and when to stay focused on arguing with referees after a turnover while the Lakers are left scrambling. That is the kind of thing fans start noticing quickly. And once people notice it consistently, defending every criticism becomes much harder. The reported meeting with J.J. Redick also plays a major role in this conversation. Because if a head coach is reportedly sitting down with LeBron James and Luka Doncic to talk about defensive accountability, that suggests concerns have already become serious internally. At that point, it stops being just another debate for sports shows and starts becoming a problem the coaching staff believes must be fixed inside the building. And for many people, the idea that Redick might reportedly need to challenge LeBron, a 41-year-old superstar with one of the greatest careers in NBA history, about defensive effort says a lot about where things stand. That is where the tone around LeBron begins shifting from pure respect to visible frustration. And according to the criticism being discussed, the concerns did not disappear after the meeting either. The Lakers reportedly showed improvement in one game, only to struggle again defensively shortly after. Critics argued the defensive effort still looked inconsistent, the overall picture still felt messy, and LeBron remained a major focus of concern on that end of the floor. The conversation has even expanded into advanced statistics, with some critics pointing toward defensive metrics to support their argument. For years, many people avoided discussing numbers like that when it came to LeBron because criticizing a player of his stature almost felt off limits. But now, whether fair or unfair, those conversations are becoming a much bigger part of the discussion around his legacy.
Michael Jordan has 10 scoring titles. Michael Jordan was a 9-time All-NBA defensive team member. Michael Jordan won 6 titles, 6 NBA Finals MVPs, never once allowed a game to get to a series, a championship series to get to a Game 7. Never once. That was in his 13 years in Chicago. We ain't counting the 2 years with the Wizards. He was trying to become an owner, and they needed him to come out of retirement to have an ownership stake. That's what they needed.
And if you are a Lakers fan, that frustration is probably starting to feel very real because this team already has enough problems to deal with. The Lakers are not built like a flawless championship contender. They do not have a roster capable of covering up bad defense with elite offense every single night. More than anything, they need their biggest stars to set the standard. They need buy-in from the top. They need LeBron James and Luka Doncic fully engaged on both ends of the floor so the rest of the team can follow that same energy. If that does not happen, then the Lakers become vulnerable to exactly the type of performances critics keep pointing toward: ugly losses, embarrassing stretches, and games slipping away against teams they should be competing with much more comfortably. That is usually where the roster argument enters the conversation. LeBron supporters often point to the same explanation: the roster simply is not good enough. The Lakers do not have enough help. The team lacks reliable defenders. The supporting cast has flaws. And to be fair, some of those points are absolutely valid. The Lakers are not a perfect team, and the roster clearly has weaknesses. But according to critics, that is not really the main question. The bigger question is whether those roster problems excuse a lack of effort. And that is where the argument becomes much tougher. The criticism says the roster excuse might explain why the Lakers are not championship favorites. It might explain why they struggle with depth or consistency. It may even explain certain defensive problems. But critics argue it does not explain moments where LeBron appears disengaged during games, that it does not explain situations where frustration after a turnover seems to take priority over getting back defensively. It does not explain missed second-effort plays or moments where a player with LeBron's basketball IQ and experience appears passive when the team needs urgency. That is where the defense of LeBron starts becoming harder for some people to maintain. The argument then shifts towards something even bigger. Critics suggest that if LeBron truly cannot physically handle major defensive responsibilities anymore, then maybe adjustment should happen. Fewer minutes, a smaller role, more energy saved for specific moments. In basketball terms, maybe accepting limitations that naturally come with age. And honestly, on paper, that sounds like a reasonable basketball conversation. But this is where things become complicated. Critics argue that LeBron himself has consistently pushed back against those limitations. The belief is that if a player still wants superstar minutes, superstar responsibilities, and superstar praise, then criticism naturally comes with that territory too. That becomes the center of the entire debate. You cannot fully embrace the praise that comes with looking elite while completely avoiding criticism when effort or consistency becomes part of the conversation. And that is why some media voices are beginning to sound different. Not everyone. LeBron still has countless supporters, loyal fans, and people who continue defending his greatness. But the tone around the conversation appears to be changing because the same cycle keeps repeating. The Lakers struggle defensively. LeBron gets criticized. Supporters defend him. Then LeBron delivers a spectacular play that reminds everyone how special he still is. The criticism quiets down for a while. Then another disappointing loss happens, and the exact same conversation returns. For some fans and analysts, that pattern is starting to feel repetitive. Another point critics continue bringing up is that the Lakers may no longer revolve around LeBron the same way they once did. That can be difficult for longtime fans to accept because for years, the NBA almost felt centered around him. But according to many observers, today's Lakers are increasingly being built around Luka Doncic. Luka has become the engine of the offense, the player expected to drive the team forward. That does not mean LeBron is no longer important. Far from it. He is still one of the most talented players on the roster and remains extraordinary for his age. But the conversation now feels different. For the first time in a long time, LeBron may no longer be the unquestioned center of everything in Los Angeles.
Every person in the bubble is under a unique circumstance. Everybody that's in the bubble is not accustomed in a professional career of playing without fans. So, Skip, no one wants to hear why you guys haven't played well, why you haven't shot the ball well, why you haven't looked like the Lakers that gained the #1 seed in the West. All they want to hear is what are you going to do to fix the problem?
That matters because it completely changes what the Lakers actually need from LeBron James at this stage of his career. They do not need him to dominate every single possession anymore. They do not need him carrying the ball like he is the only superstar in the building. And they definitely do not need the focus to be on individual highlights or personal numbers. What they need is simple. Winning basketball at this point. The Lakers need LeBron to contribute in ways that help the team succeed, even if that means sacrificing touches, stats, or some of the habits that came from spending years as the center of everything. That is the argument critics keep returning to. The Lakers are a basketball team trying to win games, not a LeBron James highlight machine built to protect his image or pad his legacy. And according to the criticism being discussed, if the roster already has flaws, then the answer cannot be coasting on one end of the floor while still expecting control, praise, and defensive freedom on the other. Critics argue the standard becomes simple. Either LeBron is helping the team in ways that truly matter, or he is not. Sounds harsh. But many people see that as a fair standard for a player of his level. The conversation gets even tougher when critics take the argument a step further. Some believe that if LeBron truly cannot consistently handle the basic responsibilities the Lakers need anymore, especially defensively, then difficult questions naturally follow. Should his role shrink? Should his minutes change? Should expectations be adjusted? And for some critics, the toughest question becomes unavoidable. If a player can no longer consistently meet the demands of a major role, then at what point does retirement become part of the conversation? That may sound brutally harsh, especially considering LeBron's legendary resume, but it reflects the larger argument critics are making. Eventually, every superstar reaches a stage where choices become limited. Either the role changes, limitations are accepted, or the career moves closer to its final chapter. At the center of this entire debate is one simple reality. Expectations never disappear when greatness is involved. The higher the legacy, the louder the criticism becomes. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more NBA stories, LeBron coverage, and deep dive basketball content like this. And drop your thoughts in the comments, because the conversation surrounding LeBron's defense is only getting louder.